The Mexican muralist movement is best understood as a social, cultural, and post-Mexican Revolution phenomenon. Led by newly appointed Minister of Public Education Jose Vasconcelos, the Mexican muralist movement transformed the way the world saw Mexico and the way Mexico sees itself, even to this day. This Mexican Renaissance was spawned after reeling from the murder of multiple presidents and approximately 1.5 million deaths during the Revolution. It was the arts that were seen as a way to educate the public and take stock in Mexico's great, vibrant cultural heritage. By far, the most prominent and largest figure, no pun intended, was Diego Rivera, and the Mexican muralist movement was born. Rivera was born on December of 1886 in the central Mexican state of Guanajuato. At his height, Diego Rivera was one of the most famous artists in the world. He is a master artist, working on multiple mediums, but is most famous for his grand fresco murals, bursting with colors and adorning public buildings in the United States and Mexico, especially in Mexico City. He produced thousands of artworks and is the most prolific artist in Mexican history. By comparison, his third and favorite wife, Frida Kahlo, produced about 200 sketches and paintings, a great artist in her own right. Diego became the face of Mexican muralism by sheer qualitative and quantitative measures, nearly unprecedented. Rivera was a prodigy, producing murals in his home as a child. Born with a twin brother, Carlos died before reaching 2 years, and his parents put all their attention on Diego. They moved to Mexico City, and Diego trained with the best Mexican artists. Even more formidable was the 14 years spent in Europe, first in Spain, on commission. Then he moved to Paris and studied and partied with some of the most famous artists of his day, Cezanne, Seurat, and Picasso, among others. Paid for by the Mexican government, he also travels to Italy and studies fresco paintings, learning from the master artwork of Raphael, Giotto, Michelangelo, and all the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Here's a work Rivera produced in 1915 Europe, Zapatista Landscape. It's superb. Is it more European or Mexican art? Clearly you can see the avant-garde Cubism style Rivera painted in Europe. It's a great work of art, but far from what Diego will be famous for. And look at this painting. Another great work of Cubism, far from public frescoes, but the young artist is learning. Amazing, but no murals quite yet. Training for 14 years in Europe, Rivera returns home. He is quickly commissioned to repaint government buildings. He has missed most of the fighting of the Mexican Revolution, but has trained for most of his life as an artist. He's ready to paint larger works. His first creation was painted at the National Preparatory School in Mexico City. Gorgeous in its style, but Rivera produces an overtly Byzantine or Middle Ages work of art. Diego delivers mostly female muses of humanity, music, charity, knowledge, hope, and the like. Like all his grand murals, this work is a hybrid of allegory and mythical motifs. Diego has created an amazing work, but again, it's far from the murals we're used to and expect. What is common is using lovers as models. Lupe Marin, his second wife, appears prominent, first as song, then in many other artworks. And as you see Raphael, the Trinity, and the Saints, you can see the obvious connection Diego makes to European classics. Devout to these religious paintings, angelic muses, Madonna and Child, and the standards of Christianity are present in Raphael's work, and Diego's. But Diego changes out the pillars of Christianity with muses of humanity. His golden halos are similar to Italian Middle Ages and Renaissance artwork, including these glorious golden halos on Giotto's work. Or seen here in another work by Giotto. Or in this masterpiece, The Coronation of the Virgin by Angelico. Diego Rivera becomes famous for fresco mirror paintings. In essence, fresco painting uses fresh plaster, where the term fresco gets its name, fresh. Fresco muralism painting is a much more difficult process, partly because the painter must apply the hues before the plaster dries. In essence, the fresco work of art is not only painted on the wall, but becomes a part of the wall, the perfect metaphor for the Mexican muralist movement. As the people reappropriate their public buildings, Diego's artwork of Mexican workers and farmers are not mere paintings on walls. They become part of the physical building. They are part of the post-Mexican Revolution democracy, the essence of Mexican muralism. And fresco painting isn't an Italian invention. Mexicans have been painting in the fresco style for more than 1,000 years. The fresco murals at Teotihuacan are probably the best examples. Adorned on many walls, including the multiple apartment structure, the vibrant reds teach multiple subjects at Teotihuacan, including the afterlife and the birth of the universe. Although creation is a great work of art, the subjects don't appear very Mexican. That changes with his trips to Tehuantepec in Oaxaca. With Minister of Education Jose Vasconcelos, they traveled to a cultural vibrant place of Mexico, which at the time is the closest thing to time travel in order to get a sense of what ancient Mexico looks like. The colors, sounds, and people inspired Diego, and his artwork changed dramatically. After his spiritual cleansing at Tehuantepec, Rivera's art changes. His subject matter changes. His first bona fide masterpiece was at the chapel and administrative building at the National Agricultural School at Chapingo. He was 40 years old. The Chapingo Chapel fits perfectly in the post-Mexican Revolution ideals. A former 18th century hacienda owned by a former Mexican dictator disguised as president, it was then nationalized and turned into an agricultural school for the people. Rivera's central focus is the earth, and his central figure are the four natural forces: earth, wind, water, and fire. Rivera's second wife, Lupe Marin, holds soil and plant in her right hand. By the way, my third wife looks exactly like that, pero like more earthy like. Water trails in the back of the woman's hair as a child blows wind in the upper section of the wall. And Prometheus, from Greek folklore, holds fire in his right hand as a gift to man, stolen from the gods. The brilliant yellows and deep red hues flow over the viewer and offer the warmth of the earth. There is Lupe Marin as Mother Earth on the north wall of the apse, staring down the church nave. A wider view of the church appears, and you get a better sense of how Diego has incorporated his masterpiece within the confines of the church, staring from the nave. Diego's work is derivative of murals adorning other churches. In this example, Giotto's masterpiece at the Reina Sorveni Chapel in Padua, Italy, painted in 1305. The Martyrs of the Revolution in his Revolution Germination, found on the west wall of the Chapingo Chapel. Revolutionary Mexicans fought for land distribution and the abundant earth, and now rest 6 feet within her, completing the Mesoamerican cycle of renewal and regeneration. The butterflies I added represent the journey to the other side, the regeneration. Ancient Mexicans believed soldiers who died on the battlefield were reincarnated as butterflies. He fought for the earth, and he now feeds the earth. In Subterranean Forces, one of his favorite models is Tina Modotti, a popular actress and photographer, providing another representation of the abundant earth. The suburb ceiling with its brilliant yellows and reds at Chapingo. The celebration of man, the revolution, and agricultural workers. The necessary and subtle sickle as poverty solution found on the ceilings at Chapingo. Perhaps the most famous revolutionary martyr is Zapata, agricultural revolution leader of the South from Morelos, and Montaño, who co-authored the famous Plan de Ayala, decrying land reform. Betrayed, then killed, Zapata now feeds the earth, as well as Montaño. And just like maize, which was invented in Mexico after hundreds of years of Mexican farmers cross-pollinating wild grasses like teosinte, Zapata and Montaño feed the earth. They feed the most important and indigenous crop in all of the Americas, corn. On the west wall, the exploiters adorn the chapel. In tribute to Mexican miners and the exploitation of domestic and foreign owners, Mexican workers tend to the earth. And as you see the cross rise, the sacrificial metaphor to the exploiters. The violence and bloodshed in the mines and haciendas in pre-revolution Mexico. Diego's work becomes part of the big three muralists, including Diego, Siqueiros, and Orozco, part of the Mexican school. In this detail of the agitator, it's Diego Rivera at his most subtle suggestion. A well-defined man wearing red points to his left, and with his right hand to the sickle. A direct suggestion that Western capitalism hasn't worked well for many developing nations, including Mexico, which exacerbated poverty during the Diaz regime. Diego Rivera was a well-known communist and visited the Soviet Union in 1927 to celebrate the 10th anniversary of the October Revolution. When we return to Zapata, the revolutionary martyr resembles a mustached Mexican Luke Skywalker, leading the rebellion against the empire. By now, Diego's art has completely transformed since his youthful days in Europe. On the right side is his first rendition of the Mexican Revolution martyr Zapata, done in that vogue style of Cubism, and by 1931, on the left, Diego has transformed Zapata into the martyr we now expect. In the liberation of the peon, he returns to the allegory of sacrifice and rebellion of the Mexican Revolution. The style is reminiscent of Giotto's Lamentation of Christ, and just as moving. But his coda is Dream of a Sunday Afternoon in Alameda Park, completed in 1948 for the Hotel Prado. Destroyed in an earthquake, the mural actually survived and was moved across the street adjacent to Alameda Park, and what is now the Diego Rivera Mural Museum. Nearly 80 historical figures spanning 500 years are represented in his personal yet historical narrative. This masterpiece is separated into three eras: the conquest, the Diaz dictatorship, and the revolution. The triptych is divided by the balloons. First by the balloon sold by the vendor on the left, then the famous Contoya balloon decorated with the RM, Republic of Mexico, flown by Mexico's first aeronaut, Don Joaquin de Contoya. The 72 square meter work also depicts the vitality and activity found within Alameda Park, a vibrant and bustling part of Mexico City. From left to right, mass murderer Cortez, to those that know, and Conquistador to all the others. A torture scene in Alameda Park by the church. People are burned at the stake. And at the center stage is a young Diego Rivera, age 9, with a frog in his pocket, holding a vulture-handled umbrella. In his other hand, he's holding the mythical Catrina, the skeleton madam invented by the greatest artist in Mexican history, Jose Guadalupe Posada, according to Diego. Posada is holding the other hand of La Catrina, Death, who Diego will permanently visit in 10 years. Behind him is his wife Frida, holding the yin and yang duality symbol, a concept ancient Mexicans were well familiar with. In the post-Mexican Revolution section, Rivera paints himself again as a child, this time eating bread. He's the one in the blue shirt. In the background are architecture from the first 4 decades of the 20th century. Palacio de Bellas Artes, the Bull Ring, apartment buildings, and the Banco de Mexico, the monument to the revolution, factories, and new industrial plants. Now, as we move for a final close-up, from left to right, outlaw turned Spanish hero Hernan Cortez is painted with bloody hands from his many atrocities in Mexico. To his right, Fray Juan de Zumarraga, the first bishop and archbishop of New Spain, perhaps most famous for his meeting with Juan Diego, unveiling the image of the Virgen of Guadalupe. Zumarraga also ordered the trial of one of Texcocan's Nezahualcóyotl's grandson, the first person killed by the tribunal of the faith. He was executed for keeping his Mesoamerican faith, or in legal terms, idolatry. Other victims of the Inquisition, burned and whipped in Alameda Park, are seen in the background, being tortured by the church. Carvajal, who is Jewish, is seen at the stake, killed by the Inquisition, wearing the green San Benito cone hats on the far left. Below Zumarraga is Don Luis de Velasco, 8th Viceroy of Mexico, wearing black hats and the lentes. And he was the founder of Alameda Park in 1592. Diego crossed over to the other side 10 years later, dying a Catholic, remarried again, and the most prolific Mexican muralist ever.